本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
I miss you.
What's good, Internet? It is Friday, July 23rd, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 412. I'm your host, Austin Walker. I'm joined today by Patrick Kleppe.
Hello.
And Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
Rob is out on assignment. Rob is out on, I think...
No, there's someone ripping up... yeah, he was like so hard to get a good craftsman during COVID, and then he was just like, I'm gone for the next 2 days. They're ripping apart. Is this part of the Great Cable Escape?
I can only assume. Yeah, there was electricity happening. I think they're also hiding some cables.
I see. Like, getting cables into the wall.
So this is how Rob is going to hide his shame. Is like, he just tells his partner like, oh, actually, I discovered, there's some work we need to get done. And his partner's probably like, yeah, that you look over that stuff. I'm not going to worry about it. You just take care of what needs to get taken care of. That's part of what having a long-term partner is for. And secretly, Rob is like hiding his ultra low latency, whatever bullshit he has bought, and just funneling it through the walls of his condo.
Well, we hope Rob is having a good one today. And,
can you? I actually think. All right, let's try and imagine what kind of person is Rob when there's work being done. I feel like he's hovering and he's asking a lot of questions.
I think he trusts the craftsmen, at their work. I think to do.
Oh,
their
I'm
work.
sure he trusts, but he has a lot of questions about what are you doing? Right?
Yeah,
yeah. I'm thinking
this is like when you're in school and you what do you call it when you like take a course you're not actually getting credit for? There's a word for that. Yeah, he's auditing an electrician's course today. Asking too many questions.
Whereas I have people over and I like don't know what to do with myself. And I'm like, I'll be in this room over there if you need me, and then we'll do just enough interaction to feel like I've satisfied the social contract. We'll ask a question or two if it's like someone coming to do something to my house that I could learn. To like, hey, what does this pipe do? How do I remember? Like the first time we had like plumbing done, I was like, no one pointed out where the main water valve is. Could you help me find that? And I was like, oh, that's useful. But otherwise, I just get like really uncomfortable around someone doing their work. I'm just like, I'm gonna shut this door, or in the words of Rob in a Resident Evil stream, I close my, that's my
closing
the door.
Yeah. Those streams have been really good. I'm caught up on those streams now. People who have missed it, Rob and Patrick have been playing Resident Evil what's it called? Resident Evil Remake?
It doesn't have. I don't think it has. I mean, people have dubbed it remake, like capital RE.
Sure.
Make is sort of like the vernacular amongst Resident Evil fans. But I mean, for Capcom's purposes, that is the original game. I mean, they haven't erased, original, it's easy to track down that original PlayStation game, but yeah, it's just called.
But you can't buy that on any of the platforms at this point.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I doubt it's just on Steam, but I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if it was, on PlayStation. If it was
on PSN or something like that. Well, people should go check that out. Y'all are pretty far in now. You've made it through most of the mansion. I guess you wrap back around.
Yeah, for people who have played the game before, we left the mansion, came back to the mansion, and so I think we're in the last third. This will be ancient news by the time people probably listen to this, but we're gonna be doing a nighttime stream tonight. That was like the one moment where Rob was like, hey, the contractor will be gone, but Rob can play. Do you want to do Resident Evil at night? And so I think we're going to try and push through. I go on vacation for a week and change on August 2nd or 3rd. I forget which date. And so that's our hard out. We got to finish Resident Evil by then.
Yeah. I hope the electricians don't do any damage to the very precise setup that Rob has for the stream.
the contractors are not the problem when it comes to that. It's Rob Zacny's own hubris.
I see.
So Cado, like, can you even imagine? You know he's gonna tinker.
Absolutely,
today.
Things are gonna get moved around. I bet part of this, he was talking about moving his entire setup upstairs and running cables. And I feel like that might be what is happening right now.
Like he would do that today, even though he should probably wait. Do it on the weekend when a stream isn't dependent
literally.
On his
he said
setup.
that to me. He's like, I bet Patrick would say I should do this on the weekend when we were talking about.
Oh my
god! But he's gonna go ahead and do it now.
Beautiful monster.
God. He got a camera that he has half set up and then didn't work because he couldn't figure out how to get the UI to disappear.
We've all been there. We have all on this call had our moments with technology.
But some people aren't like a toddler and touch the hot plate over and over again.
Wow. Rude.
Hot.
Rude.
As my 1-year-old says, hot, whenever she sees a cup. Hot. Hot. And then puts her hand away. Rob goes, hot?
How's he going to learn? Rob's advocate here.
Okay,
I see.
Rob telling Cado, you know what Patrick would say, is Rob not learning? He knows.
Rob knowing and choosing to,
which is also which is more like a 2-year-old, which is they know they're doing the wrong thing, but then giggle at you while they do it.
God. Well,
except in this case, Rob says, "Shut the fuck up, Patrick," in like an increasingly irritated tone.
Yeah. I don't know that we're gonna get a better segue than people who know that they're doing the wrong thing and do it anyway into our very dour first topic here. Which, if you could tell that like we were doing our best to do like a standard Waypoint Radio intro where we have fun.
Before we even started, I was like, I often mock or prod Austin's tone on the what's good, and I was like, I don't know which way he's gonna go.
Yeah, I wanted to just go,
somber.
Not somber, but it felt bad. So I guess we should just get into the news that broke last night. But which of course is not news that broke last night because it's one more piece of evidence towards the kind of systemic issues of misogyny and abuse in the world of video games, in kind of AAA game studios. Though also, as we know, that is not limited to AAA spaces. Hot on the heels of more reporting around Ubisoft comes a lawsuit against Activision-Blizzard that California is bringing to bear. Patrick, let me know if this is right. It's the Department of Fair Employment and Housing.
Yeah, so they were also involved in the lawsuit against Riot following the initial Kotaku reporting by Cecilia, who's now over at Wired, that was about like pay discrimination and sexism, and I believe like the payout Riot was seeking was like $10 million. They were going for much more than that. But anyway, like this part of this division of California's sort of government has been involved in at least that lawsuit, a separate lawsuit also related to the games industry, which in some way is encouraging that there's a lot of video games in California and that there is a division that is taking steps that, that workers just tweeting about it or talking to a reporter can't necessarily enact the same sort of change that a place that can file a lawsuit can.
And so, it turns out that there's been a 2-year investigation by this department that found that I'm just going to quote from Lauren Kaori's Gurley's piece for us over on Waypoint. California sues Activision-Blizzard for being a quote breeding ground for harassment. Found that Activision-Blizzard had discriminated against women at the company, also in terms of promotions, compensations, assignments, and firings. Quote, female employees were overwhelmingly assigned to lower grades levels and received less stock. Along with that, larger frat boy culture, cube crawls, during which, we should just say, actually we should say up top here, the content warning, not only for general misogyny, sexual harassment and abuse, but also suicide in this story, which is not something I expected when I first read the initial Bloomberg reporting here. In the office, women were subject to so-called cube crawls, during which men at the company got drunk and crawled through office cubicles and harassed women, the complaint alleges. Men played video games for extended periods of time during work hours, delegating tasks to women, joked about rape, commented on women's bodies, and groped them. The complaint continues. High-ranking men at the company engaged in blatant sexual harassment without repercussions. And then in one instance, a woman killed herself on a business trip with a supervisor she was having a sexual relationship with. The woman had previously faced harassment from men at the company, including a holiday party before her death, when her male colleagues allegedly passed around a photo of her vagina, according to the complaint. Grotesque. Truly, like, beyond the pale shit, except that the pale is defined by what is allowed to be before it instead of beyond it. And if something like this, that these allegations are so widespread and so large in scale, that it's important to realize how many people sat and watched this happen, how many men sat and watched this happen without stepping in to stop it, how many people felt like they didn't have the ability to do that, how many women felt like they didn't have the ability to do that, the ways in which HR failed these people, and the ways in which it felt like there was no other recourse, right? Deeply upsetting, and I think I first read the story and was like, I'm shocked that this didn't leak out. But on reflection, with a company culture as bad as this, and with an industry culture as bad as this, where we talked about this weeks ago. We talked about this when we talked about Kiwi Farms. We talked about this, in the past when we talked about harassment in general, that it is often the case that it feels like, and it's the truth, that speaking out about things like this and putting your name to it ends up drawing a target on you in this industry.
And not necessarily resulting in any sort of meaningful change. It's your story's out there, or some version of it is out there, but what happens next? Well, you get targeted for harassment, you get isolated, you're on an island on your own. There is not a huge amount of incentive to take actions other than to leave. And I think, one of the things that gets wrapped up in moments like this is there is a natural, reflexive, we got to, when you're in a place, if you're just, someone reading this, who is not in a position of any sort of authority or power to meaningfully take action in the moment, is to say, well, people who work there, like, it's reprehensible that you work for this workplace, or don't buy these companies' video games, don't reward them with your money. And I understand both of those responses, and neither are particularly productive or meaningfully change what's happening at those places. Like, to say, if you work at an Activision-Blizzard right now, and maybe you liked your job, like, or maybe you witnessed these things, and because of your personal circumstances could not leave. Like, those are not easy, like, moves. Like, there's a reason these are big systemic issues in big companies. And you mentioned they also happen in smaller companies as well, in which there's less exposure to what happens. Like, that's the thing to keep in mind. Like, if there's, these companies are so unfathomably huge, and it takes something like this for them to come out, you can imagine the trickle-down effect of how many stories we don't hear about at smaller and smaller places, in which the power dynamics are even tighter, more tightly wound, and even more interpersonal than at a big company like an Activision-Blizzard, in which you may not know the person down the cubicle from you,
and where you don't have California doing a big investigation because you're not a huge company, or the place you work isn't a huge company.
Or maybe your state doesn't give a shit.
Right, or maybe your state doesn't give a shit. Yeah. The other half of this, in terms of the size of Activision, is that I've talked before. One of the first reported pieces I did, I guess it wasn't really a reported piece, but the first piece of kind of published freelance pieces I did after I kind of came out of retirement was for Paste, about the ways in which Blizzard sold its company on the back of this promise that it was like a family, and that it had all of these kind of, like, you never want to leave the campus things. And we've talked a lot about that sort of way of selling your company in terms of labor rights and the ways in which that is part of an effort to kind of make you loyal in a way that is about looking the other way when it comes to labor issues, not getting the money, the pay that you deserve, not focusing on that part of your job. But it also helps to produce, and I've seen this I've seen this at Vice back when Vice was going through a lot of this publicly a few years ago. The sense that, are you the one who's broken? If this place is like a family and I'm having issues, then maybe it's on me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. And it is another reason to be, skeptical of that style of framing for anywhere that you work. And it should also, be said that when you see someone and if you're in a job where like that is how you think about your job, is like, oh yeah, we're like a family here. Just be really careful about the ways in which that's providing a visor that you can kind of pull over your eyes when something goes bad. When you think, oh, but we'll take care of it because we're like a family here. I trust that everyone is acting out of good faith or acting out of love, or I'm not saying that there's a one-to-one line between that and the sort of boys will be boys bullshit, but there is not no line. You can draw that line. It might be an indirect one. It might have to bounce through a few other things. But you see that shit again and again and again. So it is pernicious, and it is just an awful way to think about the people you're working with, because it ends up, it comes from a place where maybe you want to say like, oh, I'm very close to them. But in reality, it can often work as a shield to hide or to dismiss issues that people, largely marginalized people, are having. I should note this report also notes that this, let's talk about intersectionality a little bit here. It also specifically goes into report onto how this hit Black women a little bit differently. Women of color at the company face discrimination in the form of constant micromanaging. The complaint alleges one Black woman who worked in the IT department was forced to write up a one-page summary of how she would spend her time off when she asked for vacation, when no one else on her team had to, according to the complaint. Another Black woman at the company said it took 2 years for her to be offered a full-time position, long after everyone else on her team had been made full employees. Men on her team were allowed to play video games during the workday, but her supervisors would call and check on her if she went outside for a walk, the complaint states. This stuff hits in many different ways, and it hits in ways that are so often dismissed as being tied to some pure individual thing. Like, oh yeah, she just takes too many walks. But when you look at it from the bird's eye view, and you can see how this maps to gender, to race, to other categories of identity, it can become very clear how those decisions get made. Because that is again like how the style of ideology works. It is fucked.
Well, and it's the failure of just the way that companies in general structure, HR departments, in which HR departments exist to squash problems for the company, not to solve problems for the employees. In some ways, the fact that HR departments are run by the companies themselves creates an inherent conflict of interest, because they are going to report to people who want problems to go away. And the way you make problems, the way you solve problems is not necessarily, this is how things result. That's having a bad HR department is not the sole reason Activision-Blizzard's culture is completely fucked, but it is indicative of a lack of accountability in which what is an employee to do. Why do people go to the press? They go to the press because they have completely run out of options, in which the only thing you can do is hope by like screaming into a publication, in which when you go through the process of reporting, your story is sanded down. So many details do not make it through, because there are, when you go to a member of the press, you are then dealing with a completely separate legal department. You are dealing with the reporter's ability to find corroborating evidence or sourcing in which, I've reported, plenty of stories in which you are then forced to tell people, I believe you. I believe what you are telling me. I don't have another person saying it. And because you're not going on the record, I cannot put it in because the legal liability needs to shift away from the company I work for.
Listen.
And so this is how you result in, if there are not internal ways for these to be dealt with, for consequences to be enacted, unless you look for external partners to try and to make those things occur. One of which is the press. Like it's just the nature that your story is then fragmented in all sorts of different ways. That
if it comes out at all,
frequently,
we've been through this process. Yeah. Right. There are. I will say that like this story coming out, it's been a frustrating thing to think about the reporting that's happened in this space around the Me Too stuff. But even going back to One Reason Why, which was almost a decade ago, going back before that to decades of smaller wave making reporting around the kind of sexism in this industry, and just the open secret among people who pay attention that this is just what it is, and along with the actual kind of the whispers that get spread around to keep people safe about this person or that person, along with allegations that have since come out about people. And it can be really demoralizing to look around and be like, what happened? Is there progress being made at all? Is the ball being moved down the field in any way? To what degree do these articles end up, because they have to be cut down so much, or because in some cases reporters don't have the resources they need to, or because in some cases the reporters make the mistake of being the quote, I throw some scare quotes around that word mistake, coming across as too sympathetic to the subjects being interviewed, and
what are you talking about? That's never happened.
Yeah, that would never happen.
Never happened to me in an internal review of a piece that didn't go up.
The greatest failure. I'm just it is what it is.
Yeah. One day.
Yeah.
But it's.
We should add also that Activision has given us comment, has given Lauren from Waypoint, from Vice, comment on this story.
We should not read their entire bullshit.
No, because it's I just want to say it's absolute bullshit.
There is, I do recommend going and reading. Like, I almost don't want to say it, give them the time of day to read the whole thing, but it is the defensive crouch that they take in their comment suggests, one, it shows the effectiveness of having a division like this that can do proper and thorough investigations that have legal teeth that you don't, as a reporter, you do not. You need to find people to trust you and go through a separate. Whereas this, it is clear like this division of California's government can just make demands and like we're here, like we're going to investigate your company, and they can make them do things that, from our vantage in the media, you have to work a lot harder and have to go through different avenues. But that, I don't know what the result of this will be, but I think the difference between, and I still think there is worth in coming forward and talking to the media, whether it's myself or someone else. Like the stories are still important. They allow us to have conversations that even if you had proper HR departments that were enacting consequences, that shit still wouldn't be public, right? No. And part of what is useful in the disclosure that happens either through a lawsuit like this, in which you can read the lawsuit, or media reports about the cultures of companies, is it allows for conversations that can happen in the broader culture and communities about, like, well, what is happening in our spaces? Like, this is bad. Is this happening here? How can we avoid it? How can we, look at what's happened in the past? But part of the issue with, a lot of really great reporting has been done around Ubisoft. But I think what has been the issue going forward is, and it's something we've struggled with when we talk about, well, how do we talk about Ubisoft games going forward? And this is something I know a lot of people that pay attention to this stuff also struggle with, is like, okay, has anything changed? How do we measure that change? How do we measure the effectiveness of that change relative to the workers that are most impacted by it? And there's just no way to do that. You can look at what's happening to Ubisoft now, in which they are just shedding talent
Yep.
as being a proxy for a toxic culture that has alienated a lot of people. It is also the case that a lot of VC money is being thrown around by VCs and big companies in places like Canada, and people are taking the extra zero. And I'm not knocking them for take the check, right? Like take the check, take the shitty VC's money and go make your dream project. But it is not necessarily a straight line to a bunch of media reports properly through sunshine at Ubisoft's toxic culture. Thus, people are leaving Ubisoft, and thus Ubisoft will learn a lesson, and it'll be like a better place. Like those aren't real consequences in the way that there need to be real consequences.
In a world where there is such a surplus of young folks who are coming out of game design programs or game development programs or art programs, programming, computer science programs, who are willing to go use those skills for less money in the games industry because they love video games. Ubisoft is like you said, shedding employees right now, but it is hard not to believe that they will replace them with new people who are going to be left without leadership and who are. I'm not saying, to be clear, I'm saying if you're leaving Ubisoft because you're sick of the company culture there, more power to you, 100%.
Well, again, not to bang the same drum that we bang every time, but it's like the lack of unionization. It's if there was for on both ends, right? For people who have been there for a long time, have an issue whether it's harassment or labor exploitation, to have a union to represent yourself there is useful. If you're a young person who's coming in, like having a union that can represent you, like helps address those issues, whether you're new or you're experienced, by having someone who is who can essentially be like a lot of what's happening in this lawsuit. This wouldn't, not that it wouldn't exist, but much of it could be rectified with a union that was able to hold Activision or whatever company accountable for their actions. That doesn't exist. And so you need the government to run a 2-year investigation to expose bullshit, when if this is what's happened over the last 2 years, just imagine all the stuff that's not in there, that didn't make the report. I'm sure it's countless. And it's not just Activision, it's everywhere. Like when we say systemic, it means it's every company.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
It's built into
it's big,
the
it's small,
model.
It's medium sized. It is part of capitalism. And lacking accountability measures with real teeth just means people will be hurt, and then the solutions are always retroactive. It doesn't help people in the moment. It doesn't solve the trauma of that woman having a picture of herself in a compromised position like passed around. It does. All this stuff is happening. Yeah. If this is a 2-year investigation, that shit may have happened a decade ago for all I fucking know. And it's
there's
like,
there's stuff that may have gotten, cleaned up the second there was wind that there might be an investigation.
Right.
And the word would have gotten around. There are people who would have straightened up their acts, so to speak, compared to where it would have been pre-investigation.
Got your story straight.
Yeah. Which is, again, despicable. I also want to quote Maddie Myers here, who put up a series of tweets today. Maddie over at Polygon. The Blizzard news today is one of those things that epitomizes why my politics have shifted so much towards centering workers and their experiences as opposed to depictions of diverse characters / experiences. It isn't to say that the latter isn't important at all. The latter can and will be achieved if you create circumstances where a diverse workforce of artists can thrive and do their best. Quote, our team of 500 straight white guys has hired 2 diversity consultants as temporary contractors to help us make a game about a black female lesbian is the type of thing that gets applauded in our industry. This is it. This has been it for a minute. Like I think we spent a lot of time in the early 2010s having fights about representation, by which we meant representation in art, by which we meant, hey, how many more straight, bald, white guys do have to be the heroes of these games? The fact that like Overwatch has characters from around the world and Tracer is gay, and I don't know, did they add a black woman to that game yet? Probably not. That doesn't actually fix the stuff on the ground. That doesn't actually change the situation. It's the same shit we see when we talk about like neoliberal politics. Yeah. It's just it puts the sheen on. It's we went into Photoshop. Now there's there's a black person. It's even worse because it's like, at least you know how I feel about neoliberal politics.
Right.
But at least with neoliberal politics, you're hiring a black person to then give you the shield to your racist policies. You don't have to do that shit in the world of video games. You could just drop a black character and be like, well, now we good.
At least Harris is VP. She's still it's still a shit sandwich, but she is vice president.
Right. Exactly. You can have, You can talk, you can look at the stuff that happened at Naughty Dog, the allegations that came out around sexual harassment against a man there. But but for the sake of that fandom, I think that the thing that would come to mind first for them is that there was like a gay man in Last of Us Part 1, or the queer stories that occur through the DLC and through Last of Us Part 2. Like unfortunately, though, the truth on what happens behind closed doors at companies is far outshadowed by the content of the stuff that they make, and they have figured out that there is an audience out there that cares about progressive representation and diverse representation, and it's such a different thing than building teams because and obviously this can still happen this happened at Vice, where lots of the higher ups at the time were women, and nevertheless there were still issues around sexual harassment because many of those things went back to dates before that and only came out once there were women in place. But also that isn't a single fix necessarily, and it certainly doesn't fix issues around other parts of the kind of intersection around sexuality and gender and race and nationality and everything else. Again, one of the big things that happened here at Vice that was so frustrating was that it became very clear that the rules that applied to the U.S. offices at the time had a little slack overseas. It wasn't necessarily clear that the sort of fixes being made here in the States would get exported to the other Vice franchises around the world. I think workers fought for that to happen. I believe that those basic rules did happen. But those are the axes you have to think about when you think about this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that the likelihood that there will be repercussions and there will be people who can stop that shit from happening go up when the people in power are also the sorts of people who have historically been on the other end of it, who know that who don't just know that it's bad, but who then are in the position to step forward and say, like, hey, knock it the fuck off or get out of here. Here are some real repercussions for your ass. Like, making those changes. That is when I say company culture needs to change, what I really mean is hire more diverse people. They are out there. There again is a surplus of talent. And this is fundamentally a problem that doesn't get fixed by a few sensitivity seminars and hiring a consultant or two. Like, it just isn't. Not until the world has changed more largely, and until systemic misogyny is dealt with, until systemic racism is dealt with, which is an ongoing process indefinitely. You're going to need to make spot fixes by bringing people into positions of power who can speak for those members on your team, who can speak for the marginalized voices on your team who are being shouted over and abused. And like anything less than that, you will get less of a fix. Like that's, sometimes you need surgery and not a Band-Aid. I don't care how many Band-Aids you have. Yeah. So anyway, Activision, again, did give quote to summarize that quote, without going into detail. I will say that, like, it's what Patrick said. They kind of crouched in defensiveness and threw out a bunch of bullshit about bureaucracy overstepping. It's wild how just outright,
just a tiny bit of consequence for their own actions. Nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. A report.
Well, there's a suit being brought, right?
We'll see. That's what I mean. But it's not. There hasn't been a result. There hasn't been
right. Correct. Correct.
But
like the speed from hey, don't do this to quote unaccountable state bureaucrats.
Because frequently the statement is, yes. We welcome a thorough examination of our company's past, present, and future. The stories we have heard as a part of this process are deeply troubling, and we plan to work with, insert X, Y, Z to address, issues, to have a more diverse and inclusive, future at our company. I guess the difference here is a lawsuit was filed as opposed to a report. I get, that's I said report, and there, the lawsuit is in some ways a report, but the fact it's a lawsuit which is seeking damages, is seeking some form of financial equity, is a step different than just the way they can swat away a media report with a more generic statement. Because at the end of the day, Bloomberg, Vice, whoever, Polygon, whoever files the report, it's just pressure. It's not action. It's pressure. It's like, this is ugly. You should do something about it. And the company can, put it together a committee, like they can say whatever they want to say, but it doesn't actually, there's nothing to hold them accountable. There's nothing that says you must meet these metrics. You must pay out, $10 million to, the employees that you have determined as a part of the suit to be wronged. Like, none of that exists. And without those structures in place, those guardrails in place, like, of course, like any company, big or small, is gonna take the easy way out, because quite literally, that's like frequently human nature is to do the easier thing and to do the hard thing, even to keep good. Like, this is free, these are a lot of really bad actors or a lot of really vile people, but having those structures in place is good for good people too. Like, it is good for good. It is good for existing good cultures to have processes in place where otherwise, like, people may be feeling like things are equitable and good, but shit still happens in places that, like, are quote unquote good. Like that, like, things are going to happen, and having a structure to deal with it allows you to continue to have that good culture and to deal with the issues that do arise from people being around other people. Like, there are always going to be conflicts and inequity. It is never going to be perfect day to day, but if you don't have a means of dealing with it and addressing it, it's just going to bubble up and get 1,000 times worse. And I don't know that, the most cynical way to look at even this lawsuit is the result is some people who deserve a payout get a payout. That's good. Take Activision's money, but it's a drop in the bucket. And does even that result in functional change to Activision's corporate structure? I don't know. If you look at what the consequences of the Riot lawsuit, which came out of this same sort of steps that we're seeing initially now with Activision, Riot seems to have gone through an internal reckoning to a degree. I've not done the reporting. I cannot speak to say that Riot is, by all accounts, for people I've talked to, what I can see from the outside, like, it seems like it's a better place than it was before. I don't know that means it's a good place.
Who knows?
That is hard to speak to. But that's my issue, is that Riot went through a similar thing. I don't know that necessarily became a fundamentally different company as a result. I don't know that again, that goes back to the questions of unionization. It's like, if it's just this one time where a company gets spooked and, all right, we'll do a bunch of a combination of superficial and maybe even some actionable consequential changes. Well, right, but that's just this thing. It's still just paint on this problem. It's a Band-Aid on that problem, as opposed to structural, transparent, things that can address whatever is going to be the next set of issues. And I don't know. So I want to be hopeful. I want to be optimistic. I'm glad that, this is better than nothing. I'm glad this exists. It creates a conversation. It creates, my guess is the result of this will be a bunch of more stories that come out. My guess is that this moves into part of the reason these lawsuits get filed and then a state like California wants it public and widely read, is that now there'll be a bunch of media reports because people will feel emboldened that they can talk about what's happened to them. And so, to that end, if you want to speak to anything that has happened to you or someone there's contact information in that piece for both Lauren and myself. Lauren has done, although she doesn't write frequently about video games, Lauren has done a lot of really extraordinary labor reporting. And I would highly encourage, if whatever your someone else's experience, you would feel more comfortable talking to Lauren. You are in extraordinarily good hands. Like could not be like hand off to a more reliable, a trustworthy individual than Lauren. And so Lauren's contact information is lauren.gurley@vice.com. Lauren Signal.
Spell Lauren.
Yeah, Gurley, like Todd Gurley, former Rams running back.
Of course.
Helpful, context
advice
for
to our
the
listeners.
Vice Waypoint audience. Lauren Signal is 201-897-2109. My email address is patrick.klepek@vice.com, and my signal is 224-707-1561. My DMs are also open on Twitter. So if you want to share your story, even if it's just to share it, doesn't have to be something that ends up in a piece. I have frequently found in doing stories related to situations like this, or just kind of in that same realm, sometimes it's nice to just have told another person. And so if all you want to do to Lauren and myself is just get something off your chest, it's not necessarily something you need the public to hear. That's fine. That's fine too. And we can be there to hear that, to at least, understand your own story and understand the broader culture that obviously is completely rotted at that place.
And I should say, for people who, I'm not in a position of authority at Waypoint anymore. I gave that up years ago. But there were times years ago where I was in positions to speak up about shit. And if you are in that position in your workplace, regardless of gender, race, whatever, and you see shit going on, or you find out that something's happening, I'm encouraging you to take the risk and speak up. Support the people who are being harassed, being abused, who are being demeaned. I don't want to make I don't want to make the claim that it's so hard to do that, when in fact the thing that is hard is to be at the other end of that, is to be the person who's being abused, to be the person who's being harassed, who's being dehumanized. But I can speak from history that the day that we published that thing, that piece, basically calling, the letter from the Waypoint staff calling for Vice to make some fucking changes in the middle of those scandals, was a very stressful thing, not just for me, but for the whole team. I could not have done it without the team that was with me in office. That, no offense to Patrick, who was on Discord being yeah, I'll sign that letter. That letter sounds good. But that was whatever, right? But that was Danielle and Danica and Natalie being here, having my back, Joel having our backs, and just deciding together that we had to say something about this shit. And then thankfully getting support from other people, many of whom have gone on to other jobs, or some of whom are still here at Vice, supporting our decision to make that call, then immediately moving on to strategizing to how to hold our employers accountable. I'll note that at the time, I wasn't in the union because I was in EIC, and they drew a line explicitly preventing EICs from being in the union, even though that's not a standard necessarily across the industry. There are other sites where EICs are part of the union because of the size of the media company or whatever. I personally think I should have been in the union at the time for many reasons. But it is those moments where if you have that authority, that is one of the best things you can do with that authority, is to call that shit out, is to push against the people who tell you to shut the fuck up or to not make noise. Or I had someone come over to my desk when we were going to publish that, who was a different EIC at the time, who was like, now maybe I'm just a company man, but I feel like this is something that we should handle quietly and not make a big fuss about. Unsurprisingly, that dude would end up also being a fucking problem. It would come out years later. And it can be scary to be like, I'm going to make some enemies today by calling people out on their shit. But if you have that authority, it is your responsibility to, and that does not, I don't just mean at big companies. I've worked retail. I've worked a lot of different jobs. I've worked in research. I've worked a bunch of different things. And if you have, and honestly, even if you don't have the authority, but if you have a voice, and you feel that in this moment you can stand next to someone and have their back and speak on their behalf and make it so that they aren't the only ones who are being demeaned in that minute. It can mean a world to someone else, and it can push back on people's shit. The second a lot of these people fucking crumble when they realize that they don't have free reign. It's not a universal thing, obviously. It's not like a thing you can go to the bank on. But a lot of the kind of misogynists, racists, abusers I've known, I've seen them fall apart the second that they realize they don't control the room. And they don't control the room when you tell them they don't control the room. And that is the way that you end up changing company culture, is by fighting for it with the people that you care about and can trust at your workplace. So fight that fight. It is difficult and scary. And it can be demoralizing, because sometimes it can feel like you're not making any progress. But please think about the ways in which you can step up in a direct way, because if we keep punting it and keep saying, well, someone else will report on this, someone else will bring a lawsuit, well, it's not my problem, like, it ends up extending the issue indefinitely. So we should take a break, find a different tone for the rest of the podcast. Boomerang X doesn't deserve us being in this mood,
Just reintroduce the podcast with like a different what's good energy.
No, because this is games. Games is both of these things.
It is. The dichotomy of games. It's bad. It's good.
It's bad. It's good. It's true. We'll be right back.
So deep.
Boomerang X. I beat it. Nice. Wrapped it up. Throwing that little boomerang around, jumping to where it is.
Yeah.
Slowing down time.
Or not jumping to where it is sometimes. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Turns out the storm. Ouch.
So that wasn't my problem in that level, it turned out. The final spoilers for Boomerang X. Should we say we should just jump into finish?
We're just gonna finish off our Boomerang X until the end of the year when I declare it the game of the year, and
it's really good. It's really good. Yeah. The levels continue to be really good. The last time we talked about it, I guess we talked through like the halfway point of that game, where I guess at the point where I stopped, I had gotten a few extra powers. I guess as a reminder, first person, you got a little spinny like ninja star boomerang. You can throw it. You can zip it back to your hand, at which point it'll hit things on the way back. You can throw it and then teleport towards it or dash towards it instantly.
And enemies that are in your way on that, you don't like actually teleport there. You sort of zoom over there. There's a reason we like kind of use Spider-Man as an analogy, because you're sort of like web slinging over to it, and enemies that are in your path, you will like the very satisfying crushing noise that the Boomerang X makes as they shatter into crystals.
What else? You eventually get kind of a shatter shot, like shotgun thing.
You get a shotgun, you get a sniper rifle. You then like
not literally, but basically.
Yeah, basically. And part of what the game does really well is it, especially in the latter half, as you're unlocking new mechanics, and part of what I think continues the game's brilliance as it shifts into its second half is it identifies things you're already doing, and it's like, let's just give you something cool to do with them. Like for example, like one of the last mechanics is sort of like a ground shake, like an earthquake.
So good. Blaze,
an area of effect that happens when you touch the ground.
Or an enemy, which is important.
Or an enemy.
And it's also a shield.
And it's something that you're just getting, like the way you powered up is by just hitting, I think, 3 enemies in the air before touching the ground, which is something you're just doing constantly. Like you spend so much time in the air, and then
Patrick,
occasionally
you say that, but I'm watching someone play it. I was like, let me just load up a full play of it, and I'm watching someone play the whole thing, and they're past the Euron, the forest of Euron wood, which is like where the big dinosaurs show up for the first time, and they're just on the ground the whole time. I'm losing my mind.
Oh my
God. I can't do this.
No way.
This isn't the way you play it. You can't do it like this.
That's not.
If you're playing the game like this, you're not having fun, probably. Just they're like hopping around and trying to find the angle to throw it up at these people. Oh no, the tutorialization failed this person.
But I just love that you're.
I was just gonna say we should be clear because we said the words like shotgun or whatever.
Yeah. And they're not literally.
Well, the thing is that I want to be clear about is that the way that this game kind of stacks abilities, it's not something you're swapping to like a gun in like another FPS. This is all every ability kind of stacks on top of each other in a way where you get the ability to use a shotgun by you have to get 2 kills with 1 throw, and then using that shotgun later is what unlocks getting 3 kills with the shotgun is what unlocks the sniper shot, and then after you get the time slowing mechanic, using that time slowing mechanic to kill a bunch of things while floating in the air is what gets you the blaze, right? Like they it's a really clever stacking.
It layers really well.
Yeah. Yes. And like it also like like the layering and unfolding of this like game as it like escalates. It's just like it's like so fast but also not overwhelming. I felt like I don't know, like they give you the right amount of like the new ability is helpful enough. There's also new enemies, then another ability on top of that. Like I don't know, it just flow like that and structure was so satisfying.
Also intermingled with that is the deployment of new enemy types. So I loved and hated the eyes that shoot the beam that you can kind of interrupt before. You can interrupt them even as they're shooting the beam as long as you're kind of at an angle. Hit them once to kind of stun them and then get behind them to hit the red jewel that's on them. I love that enemy type because that was another thing for me to use the kind of sniper shot pierce skill.
When I told Brad Shoemaker, I was like, yo, those enemies that you have to get behind or like hit once to open, like just snipe their ass. Like that's done. You don't have to. You don't do any setup. Like those big hulking beasts that spit out, spit out enemies from their back. Like just snipe their ass. Like you don't have to. You don't have to line it up properly. Just and do that from across the map and then zoom in a different direction. Ooh.
All of the stuff with like the bird that has I guess there's a couple different types of bird, but the one that has like the 3 crystals around like on its body. If you just shotgun that thing or whatever the shatter shot is called for that feels so good. Like all of the way the enemy designs plus the abilities interweave are really good. The back half of this game, again, it keeps layering those abilities. There's also like an ultimate ability called something Comet, Oblivion Comet, something like that. Yeah. That just lets you like point and click between enemies with a wild kind of overlay.
It's like the only one that didn't work for me.
You get it so late that I didn't find enough use cases for it.
It's like, should I be holding on to this? Like, you have to, the way you charge the meter is you have to be killing random enemies. You can't stop. You
just can't stop. You keep on killing.
And I like, in theory, when you explain what it's trying to do, vis-a-vis what the player's been sort of like trained and what their behaviors are, it's smart, which is basically like your ability to stop time, have slow motion, more or less like be very careful and deliberate about what your next action is. I mean, the game says, yo, if you want the superpower, you just need to keep killing and keep moving. And if you stop doing that for too long, you're not going to fill this meter. And so I, in theory, I like the tension. In practice, I found that I only filled that meter by accident. And then when I would execute it, I didn't really know what was going on. And I was like, well, I guess I killed 7 enemies.
It is an important thing, right? It doesn't have a tutorial for it. I think because it wants it to be a cool moment when you first deploy it, maybe. Yeah. Or did I miss? I didn't miss the tutorial for that, right?
All of these abilities you get in between, in between rooms in like a little hallway where it literally shows you like an explanation of how it works, like what buttons to press, and there's a small area where you have to do it once in order to move forward. That last one didn't have that at all, right? Like it was just like, here, you have this power now. Go to the
I want
door.
to say maybe there was it said build up and hit left control to do a thing, but it didn't say what to do after
the controls, but it didn't actually have you do it in the space, so you didn't see how it functioned after you hit left space, left shift or whatever. Left alt, left control. I don't know. Left control.
Left control. You end up, but yeah, the way it works is like it puts you into this other kind of overlay filter mode where you're seeing everything, I want to say, in black and white, and enemies just appear as yellow or red, and you just click on them and instantly dash across the entire level to kill them. It's very powerful. It's very easy to just clear a stage with it. I did once charge up for, like, wait to clear. I had a level where there was one, gem enemy left for me to kill, one yellow marked enemy left for me to kill, and I waited to kill them until I charged up that super by killing everything else so that I could just instantly push through the next level because I was having trouble. I think that was the ice level, maybe, but maybe I didn't have it yet. So maybe I'm confused. Maybe it was.
I think it comes like 2 levels before the end, and that's where the difficulty also like spikes in the game.
Spikes
pretty precipitously.
The hardest level for me was definitely the one where you're hey, this playthrough I'm clicking at is missing a level. This is annoying. Boy, I think it is. Maybe I'm out of my. Yeah, there's a level that's like crystal and ice, and it's like tall. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The one that's like a shaft, right?
Yeah, it's like a shaft.
It's
yeah.
Vertical.
I think that there's two. There's a few tall levels like that. The verticality gets bigger and bigger. It gets higher and higher.
I think you're right.
It's missing that level.
It's between the Grave of the Euron Legion and the Resonance Engine.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
That's where that is.
This is. I gotta find a better. Here we go. Someone who beats this game without being hit on New Game Plus mode. Shut the fuck up.
I felt that way every time. The entire time I was playing the game was going, for as cool as I feel. If the game was to like let you frequently, what you could do. Part of the reason I described playing this game as like playing like a Quake mod is because one of the cool things about playing like an old game like Quake was that you could download people's playthroughs, and then you could watch it from like an like a god view where you don't have to watch it in first person and just see how they do their actions. And it was really cool to see the game from that perspective. If you were to watch my playthroughs were me, the person, am sitting in my office going, fuck yeah, like I'm crushing it. If you like saw my character from a third person as they were dancing around, I would just look like a complete fucking asshole, like just very inelegant. Why are they just like bouncing against the walls in the corner? It's like, I look cool as shit. Shut the fuck up.
The first really hard level for me was Atsil's Quarry, which is this tall kind of crystal shaft with lava at the bottom and a bunch of like scaffolding around the edges, and this huge disc monster that kind of goes up and down the shaft and has like 2 gem pieces on the top and 2 on the bottom. Really hard fight for me. That whole level was just like, but really fun once I got it. I felt really like you said, really like just badass. Like I don't need to find a better word for it. You just feel badass when it all comes together.
Yeah.
And then I guess that leads
in a way that is like so fundamentally different to the way that when we normally ascribe the terms of like feeling powerful or feeling like a badass in video games, that is so closely associated with holding a gun and killing a person. And I think if you were to ask most people, like, if you ask like, what is the last time you felt like you were a badass in a game? It would be, and I'm not saying like playing Warzone ain't cool. I play lots of shooters, but it is part of, I think, the reason I got so into Boomerang X was this notion of feeling very empowered and feeling like a badass in a way that certainly I'm killing these bugs, but it didn't. I don't know. Like it didn't have the same. It had the same kinetic feeling that I get from like a good shooter without like the hyper violence and in a way of and the actual like movement abilities.
Anyone's jaw off their face once. You didn't do any of that shit.
Not yet. That's a New Game Plus.
That's New Game Plus, yeah. It's not actually New Game Plus, I don't think. I would say I think part of that for me is that you don't feel particularly tough in this game. You don't like you get a lot of shields, but more importantly, this is a game where you are like at all points a step away from losing complete control and like feeling like you're doing something that you don't have. Like you're really walking that line between being the most balletic, dancer you've ever seen in your life versus just stumbling and falling and slamming yourself into a wall and falling to the ground and breaking your combo, and just you feel unhinged in some moments. But like you gotta be unhinged to get through these levels. You get to the Resonance engine, the second to last level, the last level before the boss, which is this huge arena with these like giant ancient columns and enemies everywhere. And there are these like huge blasts of light coming out of the super birds, and the big dinosaur ones are blocking off half the level's height because of their weird disc things, and you're like throwing yourself between the kind of streams of fire, and you're like, I guess I gotta go here. I guess I gotta go towards the beam of light. Yeah. That's cool. That's safer than where I am now. And that feeling is like the fact that you have to play dangerously to win is really, really, really cool and feels somehow different than most shooters. Like I do think the time I put into Doom 2016 is there, but even when I go back and think about that game, I rarely felt like this close to. I still played that game safer than I played this game, with the exception of the final boss, where I think I had to play extremely safe, which I think gets to your point last time, Patrick. That is like the final boss requires some differences in the way you play.
Yeah, the ability in Boomerang X, playing Boomerang X frequently felt like what it's like to be a parent to a certain degree, which is just if you were to pause. And the game is slow, but you're not completely lost. If you were to actually think about all the things that are going on and the things you could be doing, the things you should be doing, oh no, you're just going to lay down and cry for a little bit. And instead, you just sort of have to focus on the task at hand, and then occasionally, like, it reminds me of like playing with my oldest, Jessica. She's, almost 5. Like, I can talk to her. Like I have this target in front, like we can have a relationship, which feels like when I'm going up against like an enemy, I have an idea of what I'm doing, I have a plan, and then like the 1-year-old is like eating a plant on the other side of the room. And I know that's going on, and I just have to like turn around briefly and yell at them and say, no, and they drop the plant from their mouth and spit it out, and then I turn back around like to my 5-year-old, and like that's like often how Boomerang X feels is just like, you have a plan, there's 1,000 other things happening, don't worry about it too much, because if you do, it's all going to fall apart. And I think part of what is the beautiful chaos of that final area is a lot of what you can do in Boomerang X and every other level is there's always kind of an escape hatch. I mean, yes, there are enemies that will like block off half the area very briefly, or there's the pillar of light. But you have a lot of space to work with. Even in the shaft level, it's up to down. It's just not as wide. And what happens here is the walls are now dangerous. You cannot touch the walls because they will hurt you. You have this big snake creature, like the way that it's set up for the final boss is this like snake god, whatever, appears. It has these big red like kind of crystal spots that are kind of like bracelets that are attached at different points on the snake that you have to hit. The snake's skin is dangerous, so you can't touch the snake. When you shoot the red spots, the bracelets on the snake, the crystals that it shatters into then turn into weapons themselves. There's a brief period where they're just floating in the air, and then they turn around and they target you. So to weaken the snake, you must turn the snake into more enemies. And that's addition to enemies that are already in the arena. Right, also spawning in. Yeah. And that forms the basis of 2 phases of this snake that you alternate between, one of which is the snake, snaking around, and you're taking out these bracelet areas, trying to manage the tiny crystals that are being shot at you. And then you go into a second phase where its heart appears and it kind of like shoots out a bunch of kind of like tentacles, like really thin lines that have these orbs attached to them. You have to shoot the orbs, but also the lines that are connected to the orbs are occasionally electric, and also there's enemies on screen. And so you're managing all of that to destroy the orbs, which then opens the heart up for a hit, and you kind of go back and forth from that cycle as it escalates in speed, as it escalates in the weather that is occurring around you. Like when I spoke about
that final phase, Jesus.
The final phase, I described it, I think, to to Shoemaker recently. It was like, I frequently call bullshit on, because I so rarely feel it. Like I played a game, it has sort of like a Zen-like moment where I went into the trance. And then I full on experienced it playing Boomerang X. Like in the moment where I realized at the end I'm in a full on hurricane, and this snake has fully unfurled itself to the degree that its body is taking up fully half of my view at all times. There are enemies swirling about that I can't deal with, because what I need to find is the last weak point. And as I'm doing all that, and then finally realize I found the last weak point, and I'm shooting my way down there, and when I unfurled the final shot, I mean, I truly like.
Well, I didn't know it was going to be the final shot. I thought there was going to be another phase. I was so worried.
Yeah, I didn't know it either. And so, but like my hands were shaking as I released it, knowing that, all right, I need to be prepared for one more phase with the heart. I don't know that I have it in me, but at least I've made it this far. That's progress. And like my hands are shaking. I'm not consciously thinking about what I'm doing anymore, because I can't. I have to just rely purely on my emotions and my reactions and my internalized understanding of how the game works. And then when you get that release where, like the storm disappears, the final shot for the heart is just an epilogue, basically. Everything's calm. You can just enjoy the lead up. Is, I mean, truly one of the coolest experiences, probably the coolest experience I've had in a game this year, and is a high ranking experience in a video game, just period.
Yeah, it's really good. The thing that I was having the most trouble with during that fight, I know, Cado, you said that you just got through it. Like you just aced it.
Well, I didn't one shot it, but it didn't feel
a little bit better.
I think Patrick mentioned that it felt like the difficulty spiked, particularly on that boss, and I felt like the same level of escalation from the other ones to me a little bit. I don't know.
The thing that specifically threw me off were the crystals, which I think my first time through I didn't realize the pattern that I needed to clear them, because so up until then in the game, you can get into the habit of just focusing down the yellow gem enemies, because that's what clears a stage. The game is set up where you go into a room, you activate the room. The room will have, like, let's say seven levels, or 7 stages, 7 rounds in it, and the goal is to destroy the enemies that have the little yellow mark. And so if you destroy all the 6 enemies with the yellow mark, all the additional enemies will despawn. And so I felt like my first couple of times through, I was thinking that way still when it came to the red spots on the kind of dragon snake god thing.
Right.
Where I was like, let me just clear these. And so the sky was filled with those crystals. But my final playthrough, I was using those to keep my flame shield up. And literally the final hit that I needed, before it was like I killed all the crystals except for on the stake except for one. One more, like the kind of gem bracelets on the thing. I took that time. I was down to no health, and I was like, there's no enemies. I've killed all the enemies. I can finally fucking land on these healing pads. And even then it was nerve-wracking, because the dragon could have like turned and got me at any point, right? It could have just like turned and landed on me, and that would have just instantly killed me. But like slowing down, not literally slowing down, but like emotionally slowing down to address the crystal enemies that pop off when you break one of the bracelets, like completely changed that fight for me. Lining them up to where I was hitting multiples with the sniper shot felt incredible. Where it's like, all right, I'm just gonna clear it. Like if I get them to chase me, they'll all like fall into a line, like as if they're like a needle. And once they do that, I could just snipe through all of them with a single shot.
Well, and then knowing
it's
that
so good,
and just trusting at a certain point that the shield technique that you were talking about, where if you take out 3 enemies in the air, you get this. You can use it as a shield, or you can use it as kind of a ground pound. And obviously, you're always in the air in this one. What you found was like this fight specifically was asking you to use all of your tools. Like you will have full realization how intermingled and like they are with one another. Where you will use the sniper shot to take out 2 of the bracelets at once, and then give it 5 seconds, and then you can turn around, shotgun blast those crystals, which then unlocks your sniper rifle again, and also has gotten you the shield. And like that's the rhythm they want you to get into is to do all those things. And once it's still very difficult to manage all that and very easy to like get yourself into a bad spot. But like that area, I still think the game could have built to that moment. I think we should have had like 2 more levels that like still like kind of stacked to that moment a little bit more. Because it really just sounds like all 3 of us are like relatively the same skill level, and it just like clicked for like Cado just had the good run like so much faster, which happens, right? Like I am not a Dark Souls savant, but I beat ONS basically on my first try, which is not how that fight's supposed to go. It is meant to be. It is meant to be a stumbling
good
block.
run. Yeah,
right, and like that just happened. So like that just, and every time I mention that to people, they get irritated because in the same way that like Cado's like, I don't understand why this fight was so bad. That's not your attitude, but I mean, like it's like there's a little bit of that tone. But sometimes that happens, right? In a game, it's just like you get through a pivot point in a way that other people turns into a choke point for them, and that's the beauty in looking back and after having that final run with that mission is it really is just this great encapsulation of everything they've built and how tightly wound all the mechanics and ideas are, that when you truly can't beat that fight without understanding how all of them work. Frequently in Boomerang X, you kind of can just muddle through it. It's going to be harder, but that final fight, I don't think you can do it unless you understand how all those things are stacking and taking advantage of it. And so then once you've done that, you know, it's a similar feeling to a Souls or a Sekiro or something like that, where like I understand what you've been teaching me. I'm now deploying it, and I've mastered everything you've put in front of me, and that feels so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
How did
Boomerang X? Go ahead. What
were y'all flying around that stage during the end, or did you? So part of what I did for that snake was realize that where it entered the arena, because it enters from the outside of the storm, is where its entire body is going to enter, right? And I just floated around that area and was hitting the things as soon as they came in to sight, instead of having to chase it down, because like it does this like wild like dragon, like flying through the air, twisty business, which is terrifying to be in the center of. And then I was just like, fuck that, I'm just gonna wait for the things to come in and like kind of
I didn't have an issue with that so much. It was really the crystals getting to me quickly, and I think by the third, I think I got on my third try.
Fast.
They're just so fast, and like if you're not really ready for them, you're screwed. And also they end up the enemies that make the poison spheres end up popping up, and if you shoot one of those by mistake, the poison spheres turn into a big poison gas cloud. And if you move through that, you take damage.
Yeah.
So great fight though.
Yeah.
Incredible fight.
Yeah.
Great game. I would play some DLC for this immediately.
Did any of you try New Game Plus at all?
I didn't. No. I heard it was just harder, and I was like,
I was good. I got to the end, and
nothing else really changes. Fine. Like as far
I don't know. Oh, so you also didn't try it?
No, I started it and got the boomerang. I picked up the boomerang and haven't really,
my understanding is it's a harder. There's more enemies, or they're harder enemy layouts, or I just know that it's more difficult. Yeah, for sure. Boomerang X. I like that game quite a bit. Yeah. So glad we got to wrap back around. We should move on. Patrick, you've been playing some Death's Door, right?
Yeah, I think both of us have been playing some Death's Door.
A few hours into it.
What's Acid Vert? What's the name of that developer? The developer of Titan Souls has a new game called Death's Door. I believe it's on Game Pass, in addition to being on a bunch of platforms. It is a isometric action game in which you play a crow who is a reaper, in which you like go into different realms, defeat, like the lore of the place isn't not super firmly established. Like you just go in, you collect the soul, you bring it back to this bureaucracy, and basically what happens is you go to fetch a soul, which is like something you can collect after a boss fight. You get knocked out. Someone takes that soul, and then basically the bureaucracy is like, "Hey, you can't come, like you can't move forward till you need to go find that soul." And specifically, when the crows, when they exist in their realm, the bureaucracy realm, they're eternal. Time does not move. When you go in to collect a soul, you are mortal. You can die. And you can age. And so there is this like risk that Reapers take when they enter into, I guess, the mortal realm, which is, then sort of like sets up the kind of like the broad strokes of the game's story is like, you need to go fetch that. And, things get more complicated. Turns out maybe this bureaucracy you're a part of is a problem. And that kind of sets you on a larger quest to go collect these giant souls, these sort of like larger characters that are lording over 3 different areas in the game. It's an action game that has, certainly shares a lot. If you played Titan Souls, which is a boss fight game that took a lot of inspiration from Souls and Shadow of the Colossus, you see a lot of that here in sort of like the boss design. But now, whereas Titan Souls was really just about getting from go to the next boss fight, do that boss fight. There's a lot more from here to there in Death's Door, where you're fighting enemies. You have a regular attack. You can roll. You can have charge attacks. There's no parry system or anything like that. I actually think the game would have benefited from something like that.
Yeah. You can hit projectiles, right?
You can hit back projectiles. Yeah. Yes. So you do that quite a bit, or at least the certain set of projectiles. I guess I don't want to say all projectiles, but like I've definitely hit back lots of magic orbs for sure.
Also, it isn't on Game Pass, which is
isn't it?
It isn't.
Yeah, I can't find it, and I looked up and
I thought I saw that.
It's only it might be. May it be that it's on just Xbox Game Pass and not PC Game Pass?
No, maybe I'm just wrong.
It's just not.
Maybe I'm just wrong. Does seem like a game that would come to Game Pass at some point.
Right.
Anyway,
regardless,
the Christ Tales or Christ Tales or that other one is on.
Yeah,
Game
that
Pass.
is.
Maybe that's what I was confusing it with.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's I like it. I don't, I'm like 4 hours, but kind of halfway ish through the game. I've seen a lot of really high praise for this game that I've seen comparisons to Hollow Knight. Let's not say things we can't take back.
I can't go there. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not.
I'm
They're different.
Different games hit for people in different ways. And Hollow Knight is a game that speaks to all of our like very specific like shared sensibilities.
I don't get anything like the exploration I got from Hollow Knight here is the thing. I really like I really like the structured boss and mini boss fights in this game a lot because they're so good at making fun patterns to learn and figure out like the way to counter an incoming attack or dodge. You know what I mean? Like counter, not in the parry sense, in the broader how do I deal with this situation sense. They're so good at that. I think the environments are really pretty and really cool, and I think they're gesturing at some fun mythology stuff. But so much of Hollow Knight for me was like piecing together how to get from place to place in a fun way. And
when you had to go from point A to point B, despite the fact there was fast travel, frequently what you did in Hollow Knight, or in these games that are borrowing from like the Metroid style of like acquire a power, an upgrade mechanic that will let you do more traversal, unlock a door, hook shot to a thing. This game doesn't have a map, and I think it really, really suffers for it.
It needs a map so bad.
There are so frequently instances in which I go through an area where it's clear I will not have a reason to come back here. But the way that the games frequently function is, the reason you'll come back is because your map will mark, hey, this is like an inaccessible object. Like when you have the thing, when you've got the hook, I don't know what the hook shot is in this game, but there's so many spots that are clearly for some sort of hook shot equivalent. That would be marked on a map, and it would say, hey, make sure you can come back, or I can mark it on a map and be like, hey, I need to come back and do this. Or even if it's not marked on a map, the game is structured in a way where you will come back to this place. We will give you a reason to go through these locations a second time with the things you have earned, and you will then find those locations, those secrets, those upgrades that you didn't get on the first pass. And maybe I am missing something. Maybe something further in the game, there'll be a reason to go back to the first area. I'll be
honest, I don't want to come back to these areas.
Yeah.
Much,
okay.
Which is like, I'm having a pretty good time with this game. I think it looks great. I think it feels really good to move around. Like I said, I think the boss fights are incredible. But like, I'm not having that much fun moving around the world, exploring the world. The mobility, there aren't, you have a dodge roll basically, and you can run around, you can do a regular attack, a charged attack, you have that bow, you get some additional, maybe the grappling hook power or whatever, that'll be the third one I get. I'm guessing the third one I get will help mobility be more fun, but like, I always liked moving around in Hollow Knight. I liked going back through the places at like a fundamental sensory, level thing. Whereas here, I'm not really having a good time when I realize, one of the second power you get after the bow, and maybe you can start with the bow. So the first power you get is a fireball, which lets you light braziers that are at the beginning of the game. You need to light them, you need to shoot an arrow through a fire source to do it. But once you get the fireball, you can go find the places that have the braziers that need to be lit, but don't have a fire source nearby to shoot an arrow through them. And I'm not having fun like going back to that big first area and walking around looking for those things just to get a little bit of extra loot or souls or.
And I think the locations, and this is part of what's frustrating about it, is the locations are perfectly fine if you were just going through them as a level, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you're here, and when you've left, you're done with it. And the secrets you didn't get were secrets that were contained within this for the run, for like the time that you spent here. And when you've chosen to go through that door, like you're done with it. Or if you want to revisit, you can through like sort of like a level jump
or whatever.
Yeah. And I have not found the locations to be memorable enough where I'm even internalizing, like this is this part of the map. Oh, this is that part of the map. Or there are times where I'll note an area that's like, oh, clearly I can't do this, and I'll come back later. But I like no iconography to commit to memory. That would like, how would I get back there?
Right. I just started watching, for instance, started watching someone else's playthrough the first part of this game. And do you remember when you first go to the witch's area, you go through like the crypts and the mausoleum before you get out into the actual like garden area? There's like a door with a spider web in it that you could burn once you get the fire. Like I would have never remembered that, because especially at that point, that's before you understand that you'll get a firepower, Right. So you really have to like run through everything. And I know that that's to someone's taste. Some people really like that. The thing of just like, if I go back through, there will be stuff for me to do, but without a map or without any way for me to mark it, like I don't even need a map. I'm not even saying give me a map where it lets me mark it, though that's ideal. But like without even a map where I can think about the locations in that way, where I can like transmit that map into my own head and be like, oh yeah, that corner of the map is where there was that spider web. Like it makes it hard for me to want to go back through these spaces.
Also, I think these games, the way a lot of them are being designed, I vastly prefer. Maybe you got to make it optional. I would so much prefer a map comes up and it says like 0 of 6 secrets. Oh, you know what I mean? Like just let me know what's there, because what I'm doing now is I'm finishing an area, I'm going and finding a walkthrough, and it's like and I'm not necessarily. I'm trying to like ride a line where it's how do I just look up enough to know where I should start poking around without fully spoiling it for myself. But that just seems like that could have been solved in the structure of the game, in its interface. There could have been better reasons, better, and having played just, the most recent Ratchet and Clank game, which I think does a really, really fantastic job of letting players like myself, who want to find the extra stuff, but like, hey, like meet me halfway on this. I mean, part of the brilliance of the most recent Ratchet and Clank is that you're filling out the map on your own for 3/4 of the game, and then 3/4 through the game, it unlocks an option that says, hey, we've just marked all that shit on your map. Like, we know that you might have spent, which I did, like in one of the biggest areas in Ratchet and Clank. There's a big open world area that I spent like 3 hours like getting like what I thought was exploring every nook and cranny, and I didn't. I still missed like 2 things, and that item just slapped him on the map, and it's like, hey, you just like didn't look around this one corner. You thought you'd filled out the map, and you didn't, but it's here, and now you can figure out. I still had to figure out a puzzle to get to the thing, but I knew that like there was something there. I still got to experience the challenge and the satisfaction of getting to it, but I knew it was there, and the game, it didn't suffer for it. And I really think this game suffers because having those extra things is part of the joy of the structure of these types. This is why you make a game like this is to give people abilities and have the joy of like applying them to areas and to things that they pass by. And I just wish this game had better implementations of that, because I'm with you. I think the combat is not great, but like satisfying. I think it like the boss design is fantastic, and makes up for the combat being sort of just okay-ish. But I every time it's a new boss fight, it's just, I mean, let's go. Like they are just a joy aesthetically, design wise. Like they're just so much fun to interact with, and I'm just frequently finding that at the moments in between those fights are less satisfying than I would like, and then I think are also hampered by these sort of like UI and design flaws that we've spoken to, that I think could have been addressed. And adding a map is not a trivial thing. I'm not asking these designers to add a map. That would be really difficult. And they may have made I think not having it is a design choice. There's not a world where these people didn't have a conversation where someone said, do you think we should add a map? Like they made the decision not to. I just disagree on not having something else in place that would allow you to track down all the other stuff, because that is the joy I get. Part of the joy I get out of the games built like this is I want to go find that stuff, and finding that stuff while watching a YouTube video is not satisfying to me.
We're sounding pretty down on this game, and I want to be clear that I think that like there's a lot of really cool shit in it. I think that the enemy design is good. I mentioned that the bosses are really good, but the enemy design is good, and they really sing in like a handful of really tough arena fights where you're forced to fight a bunch of them back to back to back without being able to like go heal somewhere. Healing in this game is interesting. You have these seeds that you get that you can plant in certain urns around the world, certain kind of vases around the world, and they'll generate like a healing orb. There's a healing fruit for you to eat, and then over time, another one will sprout. So sometimes I'll plant one in like a kind of convenient to get to place. That way, I know that on subsequent runs, like one of the early places is a manor that you're moving through, and there's kind of a central hub to that manor that like that stuff spokes off from, and so the healing item there is a good place to put that or that is a good place to put the healing item, since you'll be passing through to go between the different zones. I like that manor a lot. I think that manor is a fun place to kind of explore and go do all the puzzles in and all that stuff. I do think that there's a lot here. I think it's very charming. I think the music is really good, but I'm just, it feels a little flatter to me than I had hoped it would be. And I think that's mostly in terms of the stuff between the big moments. And it's a shame because I think this team is, I think this is, I played a little bit of Titan Souls. I think this is more ambitious than Titan Souls in so many ways, and I want to encourage that ambition. But there was something about the focus of Titan Souls that I think comes through here in the boss fights. I think Patrick, I said that to you the other day.
I believe we talked about this, maybe like a week ago. It was like, this sounds like a team whose previous game was a game in which you primarily fought bosses. That remains the strength of this game. And I think the way I had said privately was like, this is a team trending in the right direction. Like
100%.
A lot of Death's Door makes me excited for where this team goes in the future, because it's, they not shocking. The thing they were good at, they are still good at, and then they're figuring out the other stuff. And this game moves really well in that direction. And I'm so like, I'm going to finish this. I'm really enjoying it. And then hopefully like the guides that different websites are putting together will help me like fill out the end of that. That said, like, I don't know that I need another health bar. Like, I thought for a while that, like, the game sets up like, oh, you can collect 4 crystals to shoot more magic and 4 crystals or whatever to get more health. And I thought, oh, I wonder if there's gonna be like 20 of these in the game where I'm like, my health is gonna double. And it seems clear right now, like, no, there's 4 of them in the game, and you'll get 1 health bar extra, and there's like 4 of the magic.
Is that really true? Yeah,
I don't know, but I've only found 1 health one and 2 magic ones, and I'm 4 hours into the game, so maybe there's double that, but it's not as though there's a billion of these to find. And at that point, it's like, well, I guess the game is telling me in a certain way,
you got what you need.
You've got what you need. The game is what it is, and if you want to get rewarded with an extra one, you can, but you don't necessarily need to. But yeah, I think this is probably a game that people are going to like a lot more than we do.
100%. Yep,
100%. That's just based on how I've seen people talking about it. I think all that's fair. And I think I think part of where some of the tone of this conversation comes from is I was expecting, when you go into a game being like, hell yeah, here we go. Like, this seems like it's just for me.
This is my shit. Yeah.
Like, this is exactly my thing. And, sometimes it doesn't land in the way you want it in certain ways. And then other times you have like a Boomerang X, which is like a game that I didn't really have on my radar. It was like, this looks kind of interesting. You play it, and all of a sudden, it was made for me. Like, so you like that.
Yeah.
That sometimes that happens in different ways, and part of that is built on your own expectations, and how that interacts with the game you wanted and the game that is there. But yeah, I'm still quite liking Death's Door, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it. It is a game that actually, because like, it's very pretty, but I don't know that it's a game that demands being on a big TV in 4K, and so I have played a decent chunk of it using the Backbone controller that plugs into your iPhone.
Oh, nice.
And streaming that from my Xbox to my phone. So while I've got I guess now the Olympics, now that basketball is over, I'll be playing, or at least as far as, I don't know, maybe the Olympics will be canceled by the time we get around to this. I watched some softball last night. But it works well if you have one of those, or the Razer Kishi, I think is like the one they make. Like, this game works, like, still looks gorgeous on that screen, and it is fun to play in that format. So I've played like half the game on my couch with my phone, and it's been very, very cool.
Oh, last thing is, I think there's some real charming characters in this game.
Yeah,
I think all the dialogue was really fun. Yeah. Yep. That moment's great. The guy in the graveyard is great.
Me.
Yeah.
Don't want to spoil things. These are only things that'll make sense when you play the game.
Really fun little characters. All the other bureaucrats back at your Reaper HQ are good. Like, that stuff is all fun. So I like, that's the thing, is I think that this is a game that has so many ingredients I love, and it's like a soup that has incredible ingredients, but I don't necessarily love the kind of broth. You know what I mean? The kind of like the thing that holds it all together. It's like, I was looking for a different type of broth here. I don't like a white soup or whatever, and that kind of takes away from it for me. But I think people should at least give it a shot if they're interested, and see if it clicks for them, because maybe it'll be the right ingredients for them. I'm trying to see if there's anything else here. I just briefly will say I feel kind of the same about this game called Black Skylands that came out recently on Steam on early access. Is a game that I fully feel like is my shit. And then I can't give you a link because Steam's down currently, apparently.
DNS failure.
I don't know.
Yeah. It is a sort of a steampunk-ish open world airship, like top-down action RPG where you're like leveling up a home base, and you're leveling up you're improving your ship. You're exploring islands. These sky islands, basically. You got a cool grapple hook that gets you on and off your ship. You're repairing your ship in the middle of combat. I could give it the conceptual sell is so high, and it's an early access, so I think it could probably still come around for me. But it feels in action There's a lot of interesting setup in terms of narrative and story and like the factionalization of the people who live up in these sky islands and all that stuff. But then when you get into the game itself, it ended up feeling like, what if you were clearing Far Cry bases from the top down in a way that wasn't particularly, that was like very repetitive in its action. That was like not particularly
that sort of makes sense
engaging.
For an early access game, though. Like if
100%. Yes,
like,
there's lots of story content.
We built the structure. Now we need to add,
Yeah, and there is story content. There is story content here, and I did, a number of the early story missions, and had an okay time. But like, there's just not enough in the moment to moment. It's a similar feeling to Death's Door, and in fact, actually, there's more going on in Black Skylands than there is in Death's Door in terms of things I'm managing ammo and managing distances with enemies, and deciding whether or not I want to try to take them on stealthily or go in guns blazing. Like, there is all of that stuff here, but it just wasn't really working for me. And but I think, as an early access game, this is a game that over the next year or two could end up getting much stronger. So I'm going to keep my eyes on it. Fight some sky bugs, fight some sky pirates. What's better than this? Build a base. so yeah, that's Black Skylands. People should at least go look up a trailer or something and see if that looks interesting. So, anyone else hit anything this week that they want to shout out?
I'll save really expanding into, I played this VR game, Ragnarok. Okay. It's a rock bandish music game where you're hitting drums. I got a lot to say about it, but I'll save that for
Monday.
I'll say for Monday. It's extremely good. If you have a VR headset, it's coming to Oculus Quest soon. It's not. I'm playing it there, so I assume it'll be public on the Oculus Quest fairly soon. But it's not there yet. But you can play it on Steam and other places at the moment. But I want to hear about the Pokemon MOBA.
Talk to us about that. With the time, I have to bounce in 15 minutes, but I want to hear about that.
You got 15 minutes.
Oh my God. Okay,
talk about a MOBA on this podcast.
Well, it is what it sounds like.
Unite.
Pokemon
is that what it is?
Unite. Yeah, it is out on Switch only right now. Coming to mobile in a month, I believe. It is a Pokemon MOBA. If you don't know what MOBA means, it stands for. What does it stand for again? Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, which is a very not a very well. It doesn't really describe what a MOBA is, but
you might also know it as a Lord's Management game. I believe that's a MOBA is a thing we call it sometimes.
Damn it.
You're managing your lords.
Yeah. Essentially, the setup for most of these is 2 teams of generally around 5 players, and you are trying to assault the half of the map that is the enemy teams. There's usually towers in the way. There's separate like lanes, like a top, middle, and bottom. In the PokeMOBA, there are 2 lanes, top and bottom. And instead of towers defending those lanes, there's essentially scoring zones. So what happens is you make your way down the lane. You kill some creeps, which are just other Pokemon.
Relegated to creep status.
Yeah. And you get Pokeballs that are what you dunk to score. And essentially,
is that what those are?
Yeah, they're like little Pokeballs.
Those are Pokeballs. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
You make a trainer character. You're you play as the trainer giving orders supposedly off screen somewhere. Sometimes you'll pop into the screen for a second for like good job.
I almost just said tell it to the judge, which isn't anything.
But so in order to score points, it's a points-based game. You have to stand on the enemy's score zone and hold a button.
Which are those the tower? Are those where towers
would be? And
in
behind
a traditional
them,
MOBA.
Yeah. And behind them, if the tower's up and you try to walk behind it, you're slowed in that area. So what happens is you kind of open up more avenues of attack as you push further towards their like central goal. But ultimately,
and so you're not just when you're dunking the Pokeballs as if it were Pyre, you are you're capturing each tower has a certain number of Pokeballs that needs to go into like doing that lowers the health of the tower. Again, it's not a tower; it's a little circular zone.
Yeah,
right.
Enemy Pokemon, like when you stand in your score zone, you get healed. So in a sense, you kind of become a tower if you
are the tower.
Yeah, if you're there. And so it's really interesting because it somehow, despite these changes, like still plays a lot like very similarly as far as like, you know, there's a phase early on where you want to try to level up as quickly as possible, and you don't want to push too hard without spending a little bit of time killing some creeps, and you want to have characters that are like there are different types of characters, obviously.
Yeah, how often have you been ganked?
A few times.
Okay.
There is a jungle. There's a central area which is just has like some roaming like little pods that like certain characters do best by going in there and like not spending any time in the lanes and just focusing on leveling up first.
I just want to ask some real like outsider looking in MOBA shit. Like who's the hard carry in this game? Like who is it that you can?
It's the character you got for logging in on the first day that everyone says is OP.
Pikachu?
No. His name is Zeraora. Zeraora is from one of the newer games. Let me see if I can. And
trying to see if I can spell that.
He's got.
That's not it.
A bunch of. He's like a traditional hard carry in that he's not that scary at first, but you let him get ahead on like XP or anything, and this motherfucker's gonna.
This motherfucker looks like like a hard carry.
Yeah,
this guy. Look at this guy.
this motherfucker.
Like, look at that motherfucker. Yeah, that looks right.
And so yeah, if you've played a MOBA, it's it's all the things you come to expect from MOBAs squished down to a 10-minute match. Like,
it's 10 minutes. That's interesting.
Quick.
That makes me feel like I would like to play it.
Yeah, this is part of why I am so interested. Like, I don't like. Yes, I'm a Pokemon fan. Obviously, I would still play the Pokemon MOBA, especially because I'm also a MOBA. Like, I have 800 hours in Dota 2 from college. Like, that's the game I played.
I gotcha.
Before there was Destiny, there was Dota, and Dota was free.
Deadass, I wish that was me. I so badly wish I'd had a Dota phase. I so wish I knew. I know enough to talk very broad scope stuff with MOBAs. I know enough about what how these games generally work in terms of what different strategy looks like and what a basic match looks like and the different sorts of characters
Maybe you should check this one out because it's got a like kind of pared down version of
what are the Pokemon I get? What are the Pokemon? Oh, so wait a second. You said the Pokemon you start with. How am I getting Pokemon?
Okay, so
it's a gotcha. It's a gotcha. Is it a gotcha?
It's not exactly a gotcha. No, not technically.
I already have a gotcha in my life, and that just dropped to 2.0.
It does have microtransaction stuff in it that is. We can get into that in a little bit, but to get Pokemon, you need you're unlocking their Unite, their Unite license, like their license to play in the Unite games or whatever, and. There's like a currency that you can unlock that gets it that you can use to unlock them, or you can buy them with real money, right? You buy gems that you can purchase the Pokemon with. Any given week, I believe, is when the rotation happens. There's a set of like 4 that is available to everyone, even if you don't have them unlocked, right? So you could play without paying any money and slowly unlock the Pokemon and just use the free ones in the meantime. To have because you have kind of smattering.
Who's free right now?
Yeah, it's free. They're all.
Who is free right now?
Oh, who is free? Who was it? I think fucking. I don't know who is free. Also the part of the thing is right now as you start up, and I don't know if this is gonna track for forever or whether or not this is like first week stuff. They're dropping a lot of like. Free
gems
ones.
or whatever,
not gems even. Just like
full characters.
Like I just like for logging in yesterday, you got Zeraora, you got Ninetales.
Do you get Snorlax?
Did I unlock? I'm trying to remember if I unlocked Snorlax or if I just got.
I watched
Snorlax.
someone play a Snorlax yesterday. I was very happy to see Snorlax as like a defense support.
Yeah, Snorlax is a tank and he's fucking great. I love that. He's got this great little hop that, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. He's got this great little hop that gets it that you can has a surprising amount of distance, or you just like jump up and fucking slam down on people. And people don't expect it. They're like, look at this little guy walking, big guy. Look at that big guy walking around all slow, and then boom, he's on your ass.
Saving everybody.
Saving everyone. He's holding all the Pokemon.
He's holding all the Pokemon. Are there... Can I talk about some Pokemon shit? Are there evolutions? Do you...
So essentially, what you choose, essentially, the last... stage Pokemon. So like I have
I unlocked Gengar, but you start as a
at the beginning of the game, like every MOBA, like there's a leveling system where you kill creeps, you get XP, you level up. Leveling up lets you have newer moves. Like everyone has their level 1 and level 3 is where you get your first 2 abilities. You have 3 abilities in this game. 2 regular abilities and 1 like ultimate. The 2 regular abilities, you have a choice of 2 once you hit a certain level, so you can kind of
like they level up and you can pick between like whatever a long range version of a.
There's like for Snorlax, for example, he's got the when you level him up, he's got the when you start, he has Tackle, which is this little short range like burst where he like flings himself forward, stuns people for like a second.
Like you do.
Then you can replace that with heavy slam, which is the one I was talking about, where he jumps in the air really quickly and like slams down on someone, which is kind of like the leveled up version of that original Tackle. Or he has this other option called Flail, which is a buff where depending on how low your HP is, you get a buff. You get more buff the lower your HP is. So it's a very kind of like last second, like, all right,
risk reward,
get in there.
You're not going to go back and heal necessarily. You're going to hang in.
Well, for his other ability, you start off with Rest, which he just lays down on the ground and heals. Also becomes immovable, so you can use it to kind of block paths, which is really fun.
Oh, that's very funny.
It's very good to like block someone who's trying to run away by just falling asleep and have your teammate come up and like boom.
Yeah,
it's a very good feeling. And then so
it doesn't have the Jigglypuff smash rest element, right?
No. It's just it's just you fall asleep. You basically become a wall and you heal over time as you're sleeping. And then the other option is a yawn, which is he yawns in a direction, and if you hit a Pokemon with your yawn, they fall asleep, which is a very good ranged stun. So yeah, it's great.
You hear me turning on my Switch so I can just download this shit,
dude. It's fun. It's good. It's also like it's like very low.
You said 10-minute matches, and that's
10-minute matches. There's a quick play, which is.
What was that? One more time?
There's a quick play, which is 3-minute matches.
3-minute matches.
For on different maps, which is actually kind of fun. It's basically a different game mode, although the objectives is the same. There's like modifiers, and the maps are smaller. There's no like real jungle. It's just like the 2 lanes, kind of almost parallel to each other, very close. And it's only 4v4 instead of 5v5. The quick play, and that's really. It's like I was surprised how different it felt to get into those. Like there's it was like in I forget what the name of the place. It was like a icy, snowy town or whatever, and so the ground was ice, which meant everyone moved faster. It didn't actually have the like ice effect, but like the thing they did was in your own lanes on whatever map, when you're on your side of the map and your towers are still up. That same zone, the speed zone is what they call it. You're faster while everyone's slower, right? Like I mentioned before, in order to get rid of that speed zone, you have to you have to score enough points in that score zone. This one had it turned on, so the entire map was a speed zone, and it affected everyone the same. Everyone was faster, so it was like you were zipping around on ice. Which is a neat little twist, and also like those matches are much shorter even. It's just so easy to pick up and just do a match randomly, and it felt at first just like seeing like videos of their announcements and stuff that it would be maybe too simple. Like there's a line here, right, where they're trying to aim for like the both sections of the Pokemon demographic, like the both like the older demographic that grew up with these games and newer kids. And I feel like there's a fair amount of nuance to certain mechanics that they've added, where there are, you know, specific like larger creeps on the map where killing them gives you different bonuses and buffs. Yesterday I had this really great game where it's kind of, here's an interesting choice they've made. They don't show you what the score is during the match.
Oh, that's fascinating. You know which towers are taken.
Yes, and technically you kind of know, but here's the thing. If the tower's at 1 HP or whatever, and I dunk 50 into it, it counts all 50. Yeah. So
that's fascinating.
Like, you kind of have an idea of how the match is going, but you're never quite sure. Not exactly. And it kind of, I feel like, to me at least, that's been motivating. Where in other parts, gameable. Huh?
That's gameable with teams. Where like, let's say we were on a team together and there's an 80 health thing, right? And we have it down to 29, exactly. and I have 50 and you have 27. I'll be like, you should dunk first, so and then that
you get exactly.
I'll come in and get extra points. That's fun,
right? Like
that's a fun last hit. That's a different type of last hit mechanic exactly. in a weird way. I have to bounce, but Cado, I've heard your thing of trying to stream some of this game at some point this week. Is that happening still, or is that not happening?
Maybe not.
We'll see if it happens. If it does, let me know. I've downloaded this game.
Yeah, I'm
gonna play this game. I'll try it out. If you want to stream it with me some night this week, let me know
for sure,
and we'll figure it out. All right, I'm gonna head out. Y'all can finish wrapping this up, or should we just wrap it up?
Let's just wrap it up. We're done.
All right.
Wait,
Pokemon Unite. We'll talk more about it next week.
We should, because the microtransactions thing is a little iffy. There's like a lot of currencies.
This is the thing.
Yeah, that's well, let's see. I think it's not as. It's just interesting how it's hitting the Discord.
You gotta wait till Monday.
You gotta wait till Monday. Yeah. I'll have played it over. I have to go. I'm gonna go. For people who want to watch the archive, I'm gonna go be on the Nextlander EA Play talkover thing. So that's why I have to bounce right now because they're about to go record that, and I'm gonna be on that. So watch the archive of that. Our friends over at Nextlander. You can support them on Patreon. You can support us here, WaypointPlus.com. We'll be back on Monday with more. We will be, I don't know if there's any like embargoes or sorry, Tuesday with more. I always forget what our release schedule is these days.
There is an embargo of a thing I've been playing, actually.
Can you say what the thing is, or is that embargoed?
I think I can say what the thing is. Let me double check.
What is it?
Yeah. I can say that. I mean, the game is coming out on the 27th.
What is it?
The Great Attorney Chronicles.
Ace Attorney, the Great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, this is the
No, it's the Great Attorney.
Gotcha.
It's not the Ace Attorney.
Is it called the Great Attorney?
Yeah, it's called the Great Attorney Chronicles.
I
right?
see.
Yeah, it's
I'm just saying people would know what you mean if you said Ace Attorney.
It's the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. I believe.
Ace Attorney. Chronicles. Is Ace Attorney in there? God damn it.
It's the Great Ace Attorney
Chronicles because it's Adventures and the other one, which I forgot the subtitle for.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the one where there's Sherlock Holmes, but not Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Sholmes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. We'll have more to say about that and some other stuff presumably next week. Shout outs to, or note rather, people should go watch the archive of our Wildermyth stream. We started a new Tactical Tuesday run.
So good.
Wildermyth. It was such a good stream. It was so like, I was, whenever you're showing off a new game, you're kind of worried that like, is it going to hit the way I want it to hit for me?
Oh my God.
The way it hit for me will hit for other people. And it fucking hit. It hit so hard. So that's up on our YouTube now, youtube.com/WaypointVice, twitch.tv/Waypoint. Follow all of our articles, waypoint.vice.com, twitter.com/Waypoint. Follow me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. Follow Cado at
_Cado_appears.
Get it right, Patrick.
You can see me just studying this poster for Jordan Peele's new movie.
I know. What's going on? What's up with
Nope.
Sure,
I love it.
He has said he wants to make a scary movie before he kind of nopes out of horror and does some other stuff. So I don't know. This looks like it might be an alien invasion flick, which sure, whatever. Anyway, at Patrick.
Sure, whatever. You're excited.
I don't give a shit. Jordan Peele can do it. That could be a turd cloud. I'm like, you make it scary.
Yep, true. All right, that's going to do it for us. As always, thank you to Bowen for letting us use the track Miss You off the EP Panel Machine. Find out more about that. Waypoint.zone/BOEN. What was that?
I was going with your speed.
Let's go. Yeah. So you're powering up like a Dragon Ball Z character. We'll be back next week. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.
Cado, I think the reason that sometimes my peas pop is because I keep lowering my mic so that I can see the webcams in front of me. And what that really means is I need a third monitor.
Right. Of course.
Is what I think that's what I'm realizing is I really do need a third monitor, but I've never quite figured out how I don't know how I would even do it on this setup.
Yeah.
You gotta go full hacker and do the sideways one, the
I've thought about that because I mean what I need is like what I would like is a third monitor that just had this is terrible but just had Twitter on
Twitter.
it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
and because normally I have Twitter directly to my left, always running in TweetDeck, so I can follow news and like ideas for features. And what I'd like is if that was not in my eyesight all the time, but it was there and I could just like look up at it.
Yeah.
But I've never quite investigated. It seems like and I guess you could do that vertically, but
you could. It'd be funny.
But then it'd be so high up. I'd be looking up like this to look like I don't want to be treating
is looking down
Twitter as a god that I need to
exactly.
Feed me your algorithm.
See that shit? How they're gonna change TweetDeck?
That's why people need to stop using official Twitter products. When people are like, I hate the new Twitter, and it's like, so stop using it. Tweetbot is great. There's no ads. It's $3 a year, and you just can't look at likes. You have to open it in a browser to see the likes because Twitter doesn't open that stuff. Don't use TweetDeck. Use well, you can't see who liked it. You can see the amount. You need to go to the Twitter's website to see that stuff. Tweetin' on Windows. Great. It's just TweetDeck and not owned by Twitter. I go out of my way to never use their products, which is why I always laugh when people are like, oh, I hate how they changed it.
They added dislikes.
They're not. I bet they don't even keep that. That just
and it's they're not gonna.
That'll be gone in a week.
Just like fleets.
Rest in peace, fleets.
Rip to fleets. Time is. Pi shouldn't get 2 days.
What?
It's Pi Approximation Day.
The fuck is that?
Because it's the 22nd of July, which is an approximation of Pi, 22/7.
You don't get to pick one.
You don't get to.
You pick one.
To be fair, the other day is Pi Day. This is approximation of Pi Day.
It's the same thing. Bro, if I had my birthday,
does that mean we can eat a bunch of, instead of getting pies, you get things that are pie adjacent?
Like pizza.
Yeah, yes. Or like,
these are like people celebrating their half birthdays. Get the fuck out.
That's what I'm saying.
Like
exactly. No. Disallowed. Not appropriate. Not appropriate for the time that we live in. All right, let's clap at 15. All right. Today's what episode number is this, Cado? I could look it up.
412.
Is it 412?
Yep.
Okay.
We should just have like a website like time.is that is what is the next waypoint.
It's just the Acast site, which is what I look up sometimes. But third. Okay.